Over these last weeks, the question's been asked again and again. Where are we? And how do we know we've arrived at that place or state that's beyond the thrall of the mind, or beyond Satchitananda, existence, knowledge, and bliss? And in an attempt to answer these questions, the stories have been told that allowed us the possibility of discovering for ourselves what it is that is absent in our life now that was present before. And over these last days, with the stories, exploring what it might be that's present in our life now that was absent before. So perhaps we can have a little experiment. We know that if we want to make bread, we have to take the flour and the water and the yeast and mix them together. But to do so, we have to have a medium. We would have to have a vessel, a bowl, a vehicle in which to place them, in which they can be mixed. So if we look at these levels of life as being kindred to the flour, the water, and the yeast, like the nitty-gritty, the cause and effect, the spiritual level and the interrelated level, we realize that they have to have a meeting place, a place to merge, to mix together. So if we look at that and explore this, perhaps it might give us a clue as to where it is we are, and therefore answer this question. So to that end, we know that in myths and stories and parables and fairy tales and folk stories, that these three levels of life come together effortlessly. The cause and effect, the karmic level of the kings and the enemies and so forth, and the symbols and numbers, sacred numbers, are evident there in the numerology that comes out in the stories. And then the undifferentiated level, where we realize that interconnectedness, all come together as a story, a myth, a folk tale. So, recognizing this, as we listen to this folk tale, and the elements of the story, which we know are all facets of ourselves, come together, maybe there's a possibility that we can get a gleaning of where it is that they're coming together in us. We know it's not the mind, because the mind will always differentiate, make those divisions. Oh, this was the karmic level, this was the spiritual level, and this was the undifferentiated level. So where is this bowl in us? What is it in which the levels of life mix together effortlessly and seamlessly? So let's take this folk tale and see what happens for us with this in our consciousness. There was a merchant, a very rich merchant, and he had only one son. And this son was so beloved of him, he was totally spoiled. He was given everything that he ever wanted. But of course, as having such, he was precocious and demanding, etc., etc. So one day, the merchant and his son were in the marketplace, and it so happened that there were a group of gypsies there, and the gypsies had a monkey which was cavorting and responding to the demands of its owner. Well, the little boy wanted that monkey, and he pestered his merchant father that he wanted this monkey. And the merchant was reluctant, and then when he approached the gypsy to ask him how much he would like for his money, the gypsy said, "But this is my livelihood. I don't have a trade, I don't have anything that I can do. If I give you my monkey, I have no way of earning any money." But the child was so persistent that finally the merchant offered a sum of gold that the gypsy could not refuse to purchase this monkey. So the monkey was taken back to the house, but the wife of the family would not allow the monkey to come inside the house. So the monkey was tied up in the doorway of the house, where the little boy fondled it and petted it and fed it and played with it. But as it so happened, all the merchant's customers used to come as a habit, and they would sit in the doorway sipping coffee or sweet tea and ply their trade between each other. But when they came and saw that there was a monkey in the doorway, they wouldn't come. So the merchant's business started to fall away, and his trade got less and less. But the monkey grew fat and sleek as the days went on with all of this attention. And then one day, when the merchant came home from his store, he came into the house to find his wife crying in a terrible state with scratches all over her. "Look what the monkey did to me!" Well, the merchant was outraged, and he immediately took a stick and killed the monkey. Well, the little boy was just mortified, and he put on tantrum after tantrum after tantrum, so to the point where the merchant said, "I've created a monster. You see this monkey? We bring it to my house, I lost my business. And then you see what it did to your mother. I have been blinded, and this has got to cease." So from that moment on, the merchant took his son by his ear every day and took him to the store, where he began to learn what it was like to earn a living, to do what he was told, to obey, etc., etc. Well, after some while, this young man grew into a responsible being, even within him growing the awareness of interrelatedness with others that could evoke empathy and sympathy, kindness. And one day, when the young man was coming back from his father's store, there he met a group, a family, who were obviously in great distress. They were beside their father, who had just passed away, but they had no money, and those who were owed money would not allow the family to bury their father because of the debt that were owing. So as the young man saw what was going on, compassion rose in him, and he went over and emptied his purse. And it so happened that there was exactly the amount of money that was needed to pay off the debts of the man. And so he was released for burial. His family, although bereft at their loss, were grateful to this young man. So the young man went home to his merchant father, and he explained what had happened, that his purse was now empty. And his father, being a somewhat now enlightened man, said, "Ah, you must finish what you've started. When someone is buried, there has to be a wake. There has to be a celebration feast. Go to your mother and ask her to cook a lamb and lentils, and so the family can come to complete their task that's necessary when someone passes on according to their custom." So this was arranged. But then the merchant father said to his son, "There will be a man who attends this feast who I would like to meet. He will be the one who does not eat the meat." So all of the family came and they partook of all the food that had been laid out. But then later in the feasting, a man arrived. He was bald, and he ate only the lentils. So after the feasting was over, the merchant's son went to the bald man and said, "My father would like to meet you." And so the bald man was taken to the merchant, and the merchant said, "Would you be a companion to my son?" "Yes," said the bald man. "There is a debt. I am his brother, and brothers must take care of brothers." So the bald man was taken into the employ, and from that day on, the merchant's business flourished. It grew very rapidly. But then it came to a time when the son was so confident in his abilities to trade that he said to his merchant father, "I would like to go and try my luck in the world at large. Will you allow me the freedom to do so?" The merchant said, "Yes, providing you take your companion, the bald man, with you." And this he agreed to do. So they set out, and they had to cross a desert. And as they pitched their tent, and the bald man took care of the son's needs and asked him to rest comfortably for the night, the bald man kept vigil, so to speak, although he didn't need to sleep. And he saw a light in the distance. So he followed that light because it was blinking. So when he arrived there, it was what he found were a group of 40 thieves, and he overheard them plotting to attack the son and his little caravan. So the bald man, staying outside the robber's tent, one of the robbers was sent out to have a look and see if all the lights had gone out in the little caravan in which the son slept. But when he came out of the tent, the bald man cut his throat. And so robber after robber was sent out to check, and each time the bald man disposed of them. After all of the robbers, 40 of them, had been killed, the bald man took loot, gold and jewels that had been left behind, and took them back to the son. And in the morning they set out again. But then they came to the gates of a city. But when they entered the city gates, the city was deserted. Shop after shop was empty, until they came to the king's palace. And when they entered the king's palace, they found a beautiful maiden sitting, but on her lap lay the head of a great ghoul. Now the bald man sent the young man away. Leave me here. Let me take care of this. So the beautiful maiden whispered to the bald man that this was a demon who had devoured the city, all who lived, but had left her alive because of her beauty. Now the bald man, after the princess had said, "Go, otherwise when he wakes he will kill you," the bald man said, "No, I will remain." And so the bald man woke up the ghoul, because he said he would not kill anything at a disadvantage. So when the ghoul awoke, of course, the ghoul said, "I'm going to eat you." The bald man said, "You can try, but I'm going to kill you." So a battle ensued, and the bald man reigned supreme. He ran the ghoul through, but the ghoul said to him, "Run me through again," because in that realm, if a demon was run through a second time, he could be regenerated. "Ah," said the bald man, "my mother taught me that I should only fulfill an act once." And so the ghoul fell over and died. Now the bald man took the princess and the loot, the treasures from the palace, and went back to join the young man. And they made their way back to their home with their treasures. But before they got to the gates of their own city, the bald man said, "I will leave you here. You must take the maiden. She is yours." "No, no," said the young man. "We've traveled together as companions. And we've shared everything along the way. We must divide the young woman also. So the young man took his sword and was about to sever the young woman in two. But because she was so afraid, she dropped 2 eggs, on which the bald man immediately trod, killing 2 ghouls that were forming inside. Then the bald man said, "She is yours. Take her. You are now free, and I have completed my task." The young man took the maiden and went back to his father's house. The father said, "Where is your companion?" "I left him at the city gates," said the young man. "Let's go and find him," said the father. But when they came outside the city gates, where there was a cemetery, they saw the bald man kneeling beside a grave, and they went over and touched him on the shoulder, and he became dust. If we attempt with our mind to find the levels of this folk story, we would be hard put to come to an understanding of it. And yet, when we take it in to that place where all things meet and merge, there's no need. And yet, if we are asked, what is your understanding of this story? Each of us could answer in the affirmative. Yes, I know this story. I know its meaning. How? What is this place where not only those myths and parables and folk tales can enter into us and be comprehended as it is with all of life now, whether it be a being that we're meeting, or a situation or an experience or a world state? That there is this where they merge, so that we can nod. Yes, life, I know it. I know it. Where did this story enter into us? Where is it that that knowing, without knowing, and yet if we were asked individually, we'd each be able to express an understanding of it. Where did this story go? Where is it? What is our bowl in which the levels of life, like the yeast and the water and the flour, come together? You know that great Sufi, and it's often quoted, would say, the ground of unknowing, where the rose always blooms. Could we call this bowl the ground of unknowing? And how would we describe it? This place. How would you define the ground of unknowing? Where everything goes now, stories, myths, experiences. The soul. This is why they call it a vehicle, don't they? And yet, if we look for a soul, we can't find it, can we? Can we define it? But could it be? Because there has to be a place, doesn't there? It's not in our mind whether these three levels of life meet. The nature of the mind is to fragment and analyze, but where do they come together seamlessly, effortlessly? It's real, isn't it? It's real. Totally real. What name would you give it? What will you call it? Where is this place? So looking at this folk story, is there any need for us to make any demarcation lines between who were the karmic protagonists, what were the symbols, and what did the goal mean, or what was that level of... Is there any need? Of course there's not. So it's something for us maybe to ponder, isn't it? Because it does allow us to answer this question that must needs be answered. Otherwise it wouldn't be asked in the context of what it is that happens here. Thank you.